So therefore she started with a small center. Today that center is helping thousands of people. Okay? Now in that healing takes place. Because unless you do something bigger, something more meaningful, okay, that human heart will not heal. Either you can sit back and say, oh, this happened to me, and pity yourself, and why me, and you have a choice. You can either do that, which is what? Letting your mind totally take over and make all the decisions for you, or you can use your buddhi and say, okay, now this has happened, how can I have a faculty of choice, how can I use it effectively? That choice you have. So anybody, any time anybody presents me a situation where they pose themselves as totally helpless, I don't try to solve the situation, because that is not the right understanding of things. You always have free will. This is the nature of the universe. Okay? And you may not be able to change everything, but every small step that you make will contribute towards a desired future. But if you don't make those steps and expect things to change, how? You want everything to just change automatically without making your necessary steps. How will it do? You need to what? You are a participant in that change. And which aspect of your mind do you use in that? Your buddhi. You need to help yourself. Because if you don't help yourself, the greatest teacher of Vedanta or the greatest philosopher or greatest whoever cannot help you. You need to change. And you need to want to change. Okay? So this is where, and all the changes take place in buddhi. So even though it is a kosha, it is not really you, it's a very important faculty that you have learned to use it effectively. Okay. Then there is the fifth kosha, which is what we call Anandamaya. Okay. What is this Anandamaya? Anandamaya is not bliss. Yeah, that's true. Okay, now here does it say bliss?
No,
I hope not. Okay. Now, Anandamaya is, there is another faculty of mind when I am engaging in the world. I am using what? My emotions, I am using my discriminative capacity, my intellect. But ultimately, what is it that I am interested in?
Pleasure.
Yeah, my happiness. Everybody's commitment is to one's happiness. So this is something which is fundamental to every human being. If I ask you, what is it that you want? You can give me what? I want money, I want children, I want spouse, I want good parents, I want anything, good position. Then if I ask you one more question, do you want all that for its sake, or you want to feel happy and you think that they are going to contribute towards that happiness?
Sorry, what did you say?
Okay, now you say that you have a long list of this is what I want.
It's not absolute ends, there is achieve happiness.
Exactly, right? So that means what you think are the absolute ends, actually the real end which you are interested in is your happiness. Really. And everybody else becomes important to you because you see them as contributing to that happiness. There is a verse in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and it says, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Anything in this world that you like it because what? Of yourself. There is no such thing called a totally selfless activity. Kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Sarvam priyam bhavati means everything is loved by yourself. For
Priyam to myself.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So that means your basic commitment is to yourself. This is a fact. Okay? Now, if your basic commitment is to yourself, does it then mean that everybody is selfish? No. Why?
Because you can give happiness to others also.
Excellent. Right? So that means even if your commitment, ultimate commitment is to happiness, what makes you happy shows your maturity. If others' happiness makes you happy, then you're a big person. By helping somebody or by giving to somebody makes you happy, you are a very evolved human being. But if only your hoarding makes you happy, then you still have a lot to grow in life. Okay? So that means what makes you happy is a reflection of your how much you have evolved as a person. This is what we call Anandamaya Kosha. Everybody is interested in one's own happiness, in one's own pleased self, but people have many different venues, ways of becoming happy. And this is why you see everybody is searching for happiness, but they are engaging in the world very differently, doing different things. So this commitment to one's happiness, that search, that basic search for happiness is something which is what we call a fundamental human search. This is what we call Anandamaya Kosha. I use my body, I use my physiological functions, I use the faculty of my mind, I use my intellect, all this for what? For me, for my personal fulfillment. Personal fulfillment, that search for personal fulfillment and engaging in the world to catch personal fulfillment, that particular disposition is what we call Anandamaya. And where does this search end? You go from what? One thing to the other. From your birth to now, how many different desires that you had? Sorry? Yeah, but how many different desires you have had? How many? And they keep changing, right? What was so important to you in your childhood, now you don't even look at it. Okay? What was so, what you didn't like 5 years ago, now you learn to live with it and you maybe like it. Okay? It's constantly changing. It's in a constant flux. Okay? But the fact is that did you find, are you looking for a temporarily fulfilled self or a permanently fulfilled self? Permanent. And are you getting that permanent fulfillment through all these temporary things?
That's the Nitya
So,
Anitya.
exactly. Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. So this Anandamaya itself, that searcher for happiness, who is using one's faculty to engage in the world, to get different types of happiness which temporarily satisfy the person, but still the search is on. This is what we call Anandamaya. That is a kosha. Okay? Me, the searcher of that fulfillment, engaging, using my intellect, using my mind, using my body to engage in the world.
So it's the process.
And the whole process, right? So this is what we call Anandamaya. The process which goes on and on and on, and it has no end.
And if you are successful,
Yeah,
some are
people are successful in different degrees, they get something, but by the time they get this and something else arises, then they try to, they strive for that, and then by the time they strive for that, they lose interest, or they get it and they lose value for it, or they want more of it. It just continues on and on and on and on. Okay? So this is what we call Anandamaya. Okay? And this is these are the 5 koshas. Okay? This is also one aspect of your mind, okay? Which is searching for satisfaction, which is searching for fulfillment. This ahankara, which is looking for fulfillment. Now, if all this, now why is it something which is not I? Why is this Anandamaya not I?
Because you can observe.
Now constant changes from the birth to now, endless desires, which all if they got fulfilled, they lost value, which did not get fulfilled, what happens? It left a scar, then it just keeps on changing here and there, and I'm still as wanting as I was when I was young, or sometimes even more wanting. So, now, if all this is not I, what all did we see? Sthula, Sukshma, Karana Sharira, I am not. Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti Avastha, I am not. 5 koshas, I am not. Now, what are you? Now, finally, we come to what exactly, if all this is not me. Now, just one more thing which is talked about as Anandamaya. I will talk and then we will go into what is the picture of Atma. Okay? Here he says, Evam eva karana sharira bhuta avidyadi malina sattvam priyadi vritti sahitam sat anandamaya kosha. Okay, what is this Anandamaya kosha? It is defined as that when I am searching for happiness and I am engaging in the world, different objects, they do give me some happiness, right? Because if they did not give me any happiness, then I would not engage in the world. So, in the presence of some objects, I have different degrees of pleasure. Okay? So, the different degrees of pleasure are defined as Priya, Moda and Pramoda. Okay? So, that means at any given point in time, I attribute my happiness to, let's say, this particular glass of Nimbu Pani. Okay? So then what happens? I attribute my happiness to it, then what? I want to get it, then I drink it and I'm really happy. So this is what we call 1 degree of happiness, which is Priya. It pleases you and you engage with it. Okay? Now the second degree of happiness is, let's say, Moda. This Nimbu Pani, every day I take a sip and I love it. But then I want a little bit more happiness. So I decide to what? Go on a vacation. Let's go to Goa, sit by the beach. I can have lovely drinks, different types of different lovely drinks, right? So now what am I trying to do? Higher, yeah, exactly, higher degree. Okay? So from this little dinners and sips of drinks and all to a longer period, more concentrated. So this is what we call Priya. Then we move to Moda. Moda. And then Pramoda. Pramoda is what? Even higher degree. What could be the higher degree? Now everybody is going to go on a vacation. Now I want to go to like this really this boutique hotel and where there is a very exclusive spa. I want to make something even more and more special, more exotic, more rare, right? Or I want to go to, I don't know where, Turkey for a holiday, and even within Turkey I want to go to this particular place. We become more and more refined in our taste, and something which is more and more rare, we chase that because that is exclusive, right? Something which is more exclusive, we think it will give us what? More intensity. Right? So everything, like, it's amazing because I lived in Thailand for so many years, and every place which was a very beautiful exotic place became like a huge tourist destination. So then they always had to search for some more secluded. Yeah, exactly. Then the next one, and then the next one, and then every time people talk, they just talk, Phuket. Who is talking about Phuket? That is a passe, that is. Then it becomes Koh Samui. Then it becomes something else. So every time people want to look for more and more exotic, right, which will increase their pleasure. So this is what we call degrees of happiness. Constantly we are searching for what? Refining our degree of happiness. So this is where we keep on engaging in the world. Simple vacation is not enough, a boutique hotel is not enough, then a better destination, better this, better that. fancy, yeah.
Is it just refining in that sense, or that it creates a sense of disbelief? You know, like look at all these sort of very wealthy, famous people who seem to have it all, and they seem to be not happy and always searching for more. And then you see these sort of lifestyles of going to drugs and excess
looking for
and
the next
orgies.
high.
It just isn't enough, and then
Because
you just get so
what gives you
disillusioned.
happiness, then it
It's not
diminishes.
enough,
That's
yeah.
the law of
Yeah.
diminishing
So
returns.
is it the same
You don't
idea
feel-
that-
You're looking for the next high and the next
Yeah,
high.
and it just isn't enough. And then you get
Exactly.
people.
So absolutely, so over a period of time, as you said, and also the any time which is a legitimate happiness, when can it actually go on a tangent and become something which is harmful? There are all very thin lines, right? Because then when you go to all these exotic places, then I have a friend who lives in this Boston area where both his parents are doctors and extremely wealthy. And he says that in this high-end suburb of Boston, he says marijuana is like it's something so common. Everybody sits and they smoke, and that is like one whole big thing of. And when does it go at that level? It's something which is so. Like this, yeah. There's such a thin line, and then it is fashionable, and then everybody, then it has a snob value, then everybody wants to belong to this club. It just goes on. So you're right, that commitment to pleasure without buddhi, using our buddhi, can take us on a tangent at any given point in time. Up to a certain point it can be a legitimate, and after that it can just, and it can be detrimental to us.
Comes to watch that.
Sorry?
Comes to watch that.
Yeah. So this commitment to yourself, this Anandamaya, is different degrees of pleasure and enhancing one's sense of pleasure. Either it can take you on a tangent, or if you're a mature human being, what you help others and you derive your pleasure. And this is how you actually can achieve a lot. There are so many people who started, Bill Gates started with just a company, right, Microsoft. And after a point, now most of his time is just going in this Gates Foundation and huge scale of charity. So you see, we keep on evolving. It's not like you can't say that one person is only good or bad or whatever. Each person has so many different aspects. Okay? But the basic commitment is happiness. Okay? And this is something that you must understand, that fulfilled self is what? Priya, Moda and Pramoda. And everybody is interested in increasing that the degree, and what? Increasing also the period. Not 5 minutes, not 10 minutes, 1 week, 1 year. So both the degree as well as the length. That is what we are committed to. Okay. Now, so this is what is Anandamaya Kosha. So this is, he says, Etat Kosha Panchakam. These are the 5 koshas. These are not what you are. Okay. So why he is giving the final reason why you are none of this. He says, Madiyam Shariram, Madiyaha Pranaha, Madiyam Manascha, Madiya Buddhihi, Madiyam Nanam Iti, Svena Eva Nayate, Tat Yatha, Madiyatvenam, Natam, Kataka Kundaladi, Guhadikam, Swasmat Bhinnam, Tatha Panchakoshadikam, Madayitvena, Natvam Atma Na Bhavati. Okay? So he makes his whole statement, because all this you are not. He says Atma Na Bhavati. Atma is I. All this is not I. Okay? What all is not I? The physical body is not I, because it is changing all the time and it is witnessing it. The physiological functions are changing, you are witnessing it. The mind, millions of different thoughts, you are witnessing it. Your buddhi, at any given point in time, what? You are learning things, you are choosing what
You're processing.
Yeah, you are processing. That whole faculty is changing all the time. Then the basic commitment that you have, which is what? Engaging in the world for your happiness and searching for different avenues where you can satisfy this need for feeling happy. This whole thing is something which is witnessed by you. And you are distinct from all of this. Now this is something which is a big revelation, because who did we think we were? That's what we thought. Yeah, some of us we thought. Now Vedanta says all this is variable. You are that invariable witness which comes to know the coming and going of all these things which are changing all the time. Okay? So then he asks, if all this is not I, Atma Tarhi Kaha. Then what is Atma? Okay? Then he gives the answer. That answer we will see next time. But it says Sat Chit Ananda Swarupaha. That is Atma. Okay? That is of Atma, I, is of the nature of Sat. Sat in English, if you want to translate, you say it is existence. Chit is awareness or consciousness, and Ananda, Ananda Swarupaha, is something which is fullness.
Something which is?
It is a fullness. Ananda means a fullness. But in Taittiriya Upanishad, it says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Okay? So that is similar to Satchit Ananda. So Satyam is Sat, existence. Jnanam is Chit, which is awareness or consciousness. And Ananda is Anantam, which is something which is fullness, which is newness. Okay? Now how this is your nature, we will see next time. Awareness. How this is your nature is what we will see. Vedanta will show you that this is your nature, after having negated what all you are not. Yeah. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Hari. Translate, it means what generally what do they write here when they translate kosha? Like a sheet. Like a cup. Yeah, like a cup. Right? So that means that when people, if they take it literally, they think as though there is this Atma and it has all these 5 different covers. Okay? Now this is not what we mean at all. Here what is the meaning of kosha is it as though covers Atma. Why does it as though cover Atma? Because when I take myself to be one thing, I miss knowing what the true nature of Atma is. why it is a cover. So now, which are the different locus of error that I have, which makes me not know my true nature? The first one was said to be Annamaya Kosha. What is this Annamaya? Annamaya is that which is actually Anna is food, but Maya, Mayat Pratyaya means that which is modification of food. So what is modification of food is what? The physical body. Okay? Because it is born from food, it is sustained by food, and it is what? Going to go back onto earth. Right? So which is then going to produce food. So this is what really not, this is not what I am. So Annamaya means physical body, this is not what I am. Then the second thing is what we said, Pranamaya Kosha. What is Pranamaya Kosha? I take myself not only to be a physical body, but I take myself to be what we call this, all the prana functions, which is what we call the physiological functions. What are the physiological functions? Respiratory functions,
excreting,
then circulation, digestion,
sexual,
reproduction. All these are what we call pranic functions, right? And there is one more thing, which is the last prana. The last prana leaves the body, and the physical body then is what? It's inert, and this is what we call, like we declare the body is dead. Okay? So that means there is a pranic function which keeps the physical body alive, and we think what I am as good as the pranic functions. So this is why it says that these pranic functions are also not I. And what is the reason we said that they are not I?
because these are undergoing constant change.
Okay, very good. They are undergoing changes constantly. Are you the changes, or are you the observer?
You can witness it.
You can witness it, exactly. So that means if you are witnessing it, that
You are
means
not it.
you are not it. Right? Perfect. That's the logic. If you are witnessing it, you are not it, and they are constantly undergoing change. If you are undergoing change, who's the observer who will then observe all the different changes that are taking place? So the Pranamaya, you are not. The third locus of error is mind. So the third kosha, which is a Manomaya, actually does not cover Atma. Because I take myself to be mind, it covers my true nature from my understanding. Okay? What is Manomaya? Manomaya is the mind.
Processing of information in your mind.
Excellent. So that means when your Pranamaya is functioning, then through your 5 sense organs, you get data from the world. Like there are sense objects, and you pick up all the different data from the world, and where do they all go? There is a one central processing unit where everything gathers, and it all, you make sense of the world all in your mind. Okay? So that means we are all receiving data now, but if we ask each one of you what exactly is going on and what is your experience right now, each one will give a different answer. Okay? So what is happening? The processing that you do of the data is different. That's why in a very similar situation, 2 kids growing up in the same home will have very different story of what it was like growing up with the same parents. Okay? Because their processing is different, their interaction is different, so that is, the mind is where the processing happens. Now the mind is also what we saw, nothing but thoughts. Okay? So that means, what is your relationship with the thoughts? Are you the thoughts, or are you the witness of thoughts? You are the witness of thoughts. So therefore, even mind, you are not. Okay? Now, the mind itself, which is, in English, when we use this whole faculty that we have only one word, which is mind. Okay? In Sanskrit, depending upon function, you give it a different name. Okay? So that means the entire faculty is called Antahkarana. Karana means instrument, and Antah means an internal instrument that we all have, and it performs 4 different functions. The first function is what we call the emoting mind. Okay? So you receive the data, and immediately there is a response. So this is what we call manas. There is another faculty which is what we call buddhi. Buddhi is the intellect. Okay? Now this intellect is something that after the mind has received all these messages from the sense organs, and it has created some instant reactions, Okay? Now the buddhi is the one which gives you an ability to assess whether I act based on these reactions which are created by my mind, or I can do things differently. That faculty that you have is what we call buddhi, the intellect. Okay? So if one's intellect is not very well cultivated, what happens? A reaction occurs in the mind and then we just go along with that reaction. If the buddhi is well cultivated, what happens?
Does the intellect reside in the mind?
Yeah, exactly. So the what we call in English mind has 4 different functions. One is the emoting mind, the second is the intellect, the third is the memory, and fourth is this eye sense that we have. So this is what in Sanskrit we have 4 different names for this internal faculty that we have. So for one name that we have in English mind, in Sanskrit it is very specialized in 4 different aspects.
So what did you say? Manas was what?
See, when you use the same word, when you use the generic term mind, right? So equivalent to that in Sanskrit would be antakarana. Antakarana means your internal faculty that you have.
So
Now,
you said that karana means action.
Karana means instrument. An internal instrument that you have. Like the eyes you can see, the ears you can see, mind is something the brain is not seen, so that's why you call it internal instrument.
So you said the emoting
So-
mind, the intellectual mind, the eye sense, and what was it called?
Memory. The memory.
Hi, that's my sister. She's
Visiting from London.
Ah.
Okay, Chan.
So the intellect is the faculty to discriminate.
Buddhi, so within that antakarana, there are 4 different faculties. One is emoting mind, which is called manas. The second is buddhi, which is the intellect or the discriminative
So faculty of
capacity.
discrimination.
Excellent. Okay. The third is memory, which is called chittam in Sanskrit. And the fourth is this eye sense, right? So that means you have this eye thought which keeps on getting connected to what? Your emotions, your intellect, your memory, and then you have this whole identity which is what you think what you are, which is this I am. And the I am is keeping on what? Changing depending upon what experiences you are having. Okay? So what the whole premise of Vedanta is, we all live thinking that this I sense that I have is the absolute reality about us. What Vedanta says is that itself is varying. It is constantly changing. You are the witness and it shows you what is the nature of that witness. Okay? It is much bigger than just the internal faculty that you have. That is what Vedanta says. Okay? So right now we are just looking at where all we make error. Okay? So the other, so Vijnanamaya is this discriminative faculty that we talk about. In that discriminative faculty, lots of things happen. Okay? One is when you go to classes, you go to school and you learn any subject matter, where is it all understood? In your intellect, right? Now, that intellect also serves another purpose. When you have to make a decision, that also is that discriminative capacity, right? Why? Because let's say there is an external stimuli and there is an immediate reporting and the mind feels angry. You are angry. There is an emotion of anger. Okay? Now, you still have a choice whether to act on that anger or to say, I can do things differently. That place where you decide, how am I going to respond now, okay, is what we call the intellect. So this is why the more you develop your intellect, what happens? Less reactive you become and more deliberate you become in your responses. Okay? So this is why if anybody knows Vedanta properly, they will never give you an advice, don't be angry, don't be sad, don't have fears, because what? external situation will occur, and the mind which processes it will have a reaction. It's almost like automatic, and it is inbuilt. And in fact, the situations vary, and the mind is such that that reaction corresponds to that given situation. Okay? So for example, if somebody is sick, you are what? The emotion, a corresponding healthy emotion is what? You are concerned, you are worried. This is a very proper emotion, right? Or if there is a wedding, what is the emotion? You are happy, you are excited. So that means the situations occur in external world, and there are different emotions that get evoked by different situations. Okay? Anybody who tries to interfere in that process doesn't know how the mind works. Okay? Because you cannot have, when people talk about equanimity, this is very important. Spiritual people give a very one-track message. Be equal. What does it mean? Does it then mean, people don't think and they don't analyze, what does it mean to be equal? What does it mean to have composure? What does it mean to have equanimity? Does it mean that regardless of what happens in my life, all these different, I'm exactly the same? No, it cannot. Otherwise we would all be like robots. Regardless of what the external situation is, I'm exactly programmed in one way and I respond exactly the same. You see a psychologist, he will call that person crazy. Because he's not in touch with the world. Yeah. Right? So, in the name of spirituality, we are not encouraging, we are not trying to stone you. We are not trying to tell you that, hey, forget about all emotions. The different range of emotion is a reality. It is inbuilt program of the brain. Okay? When you feel that, when somebody is suffering, you feel compassion for what? That you can do something. Every emotion helps you to what? Act in a appropriate manner, what is required of that situation. Okay? So for example, if you see a wild, and when we went to Anaikatti, there are wild boars, right? At night, they all come out. And when you see, you don't just say, oh yeah, that boar and I are all one and all. You don't say that, right? you just try to protect yourself, right? And it does give that feeling of fear. And that fear is not bad. Please don't label your emotions. That emotion is very necessary because it gives what?
It gives you the reaction that you need to.
Yeah, exactly. It enables you to what? React in an appropriate manner. Okay? So therefore, we are not talking about eliminating emotions. If you are trying to eliminate emotions, you are trying to act against what we call Ishvara's creation. Nature. Okay? What we are then asking you to do is, that emotion which has taken place, you have a choice, you have a good thing. You handle it in an appropriate manner. Either you can get totally drowned by that emotion and that emotion totally takes over you, right? And you create one whole big picture, story around it, and what? Begin to suffer from the story rather than the external situation. Or you can learn to say, okay, now this is what it is, now what is the best response given this situation? That is what we call buddhi. Okay? So now, when you, in spirituality, what are we doing? We are not trying to tell you if the person knows anything about reality. The person is not telling you not to have emotions. The person is saying, okay, now that emotion that has occurred has its own place, but you still have buddhi, which is in your hand as to how you are going to manage that emotion. So that managing capacity is what, the more your buddhi is cultivated, more capacity to manage you have. Okay? Because life, you cannot control situations. Nobody controls situations. Okay? That means every second some surprise can come. Morning is wonderful, afternoon disaster. Or morning not good, afternoon wonderful. Right? It keeps on changing, And the more you try to control something which is not in your hand, what is going to be?
Creating this.
You are creating a disconnect, because basically something which is not in your hand, you are trying to control. There is an illusion, right? And that illusion leads to a lot of suffering. So if you want to eliminate or handle your suffering, what do you do?
Control your mind. See things for
Basically,
what they are.
re-understand the realities in keeping with what they are. So that means all your realistic, unrealistic assumptions you have to look into, and you need to give up, and you have to realign your assumptions with what is. Okay? The world is changing, and you want everything that you love to remain exactly as it is. Are you aligned? Is your thinking aligned with what is? No. So what you have to do, just shift. Because what choice do you have? Things are changing, and you need to navigate your life in a way that in those changing situations, how you can respond in the best possible manner. Okay? This is how you learn to be an objective human being. Because a lot of our suffering occurs due to so many assumptions that we have which are not in keeping with what is. Okay? I had a class earlier in the day with these young people. Okay? They are in their early 30s. So and once I asked them, I said, let's look into one emotion. Let's look into one emotion of sadness. Right? Where does it come from? What are certain assumptions that we all have to lead to this sadness?
Expectations.
Excellent, right? So you have expectations. Very good. Can you elaborate a little bit what actually leads to sadness? What happens to expectation and then what happens?
Disappointment.
Okay, so that means you have expectation about something, that this is how this thing should be, and when it does not happen the way that you think it should happen, then what?
There's disappointment.
There is a disappointment, and from that disappointment there is what? Sadness. Anger. So it can take many different forms, right? Very good. It can take many different forms. Either you are just sad and just feel bad, okay, or you can have sense of failure by saying, oh, I'm no good because things didn't happen my way, or you feel somebody else is responsible for that not to happen, then you are into a blame mode, okay, or you are angry, with somebody, or you feel like a victim. Why me? Very, very common problem. Okay? Why this happens to me? Okay? So this is something, these are the range of what? Range of reactions that we have. There's not like one reaction, range of reactions. Okay? Now, what is the reality about situation? Are you in control? You are really not in control. If you start thinking that you control when actually you have no control, then what? There is a mismatch between what is the reality and what you understand. As long as there is a mismatch between what is the reality and how you perceive things, it will bring you suffering. It cannot but bring you suffering. Okay? So that means if you want to reduce your suffering, what do? This is where buddhi is. You realign your understanding to what is. Okay? That means if the results are not in my hand, then I have to recognize that. Okay? Then, if results are not in my hand, what accounts for the results? You also have to ask that question. Are the results random? Yeah. Right? Who is in control? Right? If you are not in control, who is in control? Who decides and why? Right? So this is where we say that there is something who decides. Now, when you are not in control, there are two possibilities. Now, all this, what I am saying, which is the faculty that you are using to understand all this? Buddhi, your discriminative capacity. So that means Vedanta is using your buddhi to communicate something, so that you can change your behaviors, to change the way you look at things, to change the way you understand your true nature. So even though these are all not you, we use it, right, to solve the puzzle. So it's very important. We are not saying, oh, this is not you, so therefore be indifferent to it. In fact, that is used for you to understand what is the final thing that Vedanta wants you to understand, right? So, in this particular case, if there is, so the results are not in my hand, two possibilities, things are random, or what? There is something else which decides the result. If things were random, do you think that things are just random?
No.
No. Why?
Because there's an order to the universe.
Excellent. Right? There is an order in the universe which is what? Managing the minutest what? Cells to the largest galaxies. Okay, everything is functioning according to what? Series of cause and effect relationship. There is nothing, any existence that you have today, right now, it is connected to series of cause and effect events for it to be what it is today, here and now. Okay? So if everything is like that, the events in our life, are they connected to cause and effect relationship, or are they totally random? If they were random, we actually would not have any kind of we can't say that if I want to achieve this, I should do this, because there is no relationship between cause and effect. The very fact that I plan my life and I say if I want a good job, I should do this, this. What does it mean? I implicitly understand the cause and effect relationship.
Basically, you're saying your destiny is in your hands. You
Yeah.
create your own
Yeah,
destiny.
absolutely.
But then whether
So that means the cause and effect relationship, if this is something which is happening, okay, now the laws of cause and effect, when do they begin? Do they begin with our life? They don't begin with our life. The cause and any law does not begin 5 years ago or 50 years ago. Any law begins along with the creation. Okay? So therefore, the perspective that the laws have, the chains of connections that it sees is far beyond what I can see. This is a fact. I love that thing that you said yesterday about the child in the moon. That was very nice.
can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You said I'm not the mind, I'm not the body, I'm not all this, right? So obviously that leads to the question, then what am I?
Yeah, that is coming.
Yeah. So then, do I choose when I want to leave my own body?
No, you don't choose. The order decides. The laws of cause and effect decide. So that means the laws have a perspective which is a much wider perspective. Okay? So that means, for example, you just drop on this earth, and the earth has been going on for how long? Billions of years, right? And it is going to go on for billions of years, right? Within that, so for example, right now, can you totally decide what is going to be the state of the environment? You can't. Okay? Who's doing the job? Does she do? Do we all collectively sit and we decide the state of the environment? None of us do. But we participate. Okay?
So if you're saying cause and effect determines when I leave my body, I have, through my decisions in life and what I have done, not gone for doctor's checkups when I should have, whatever, played a part in when I leave my body.
Excellent. Excellent.
So anything that people say that it is preordained, when you leave your body, it is determined, whatever you do determines, whatever you do, it can't change when you're going to die.
No.
That's all right.
That's not true.
Not
so
at
you're
all
not
true.
going for
Not
your
at all
checkup.
true.
But Neena, for you not going for checkup, was that also preordained?
No, this kind of a, see, this is kind of a thing. This preordained is the most destructive I don't know who is talking about it, but this is certainly not what it says, because preordained by whom and for what
So
reason?
when we're born, we're not, there is not a limited finite time that we are going to live.
Yes. There is, but that we call, what we said, we saw this prarabdha karma.
Correct.
We
That's
see-
what I mean.
So that, but it's not preordained. Please understand that among series of karma, okay, a set of karma come to give you that physical body to go through life.
Right.
Right? Now, within this prarabdha karma, what she says is very, very true. Right? Either you can take active steps in preserving your body, okay, where you actually live your full life, or you can neglect and you can actually go way before the prarabdha
But
karma.
we don't know if we've gone before or if we've gone
We don't know. The
at
only
the time
thing
that
we
was
know.
destined.
What about car accidents or plane accidents?
Yeah. 1 minute. Let's finish one idea and then we will come to this idea. Right? So what it means is that we are constantly using our free will. Okay? So that means that the minute you use your free will, whether you go for regular checkups or not or what, that all these avenues are given to us. Okay? The more I use my free will wisely, what I will be able to live the entire prarabdha karma. Otherwise, what will happen is that before my entire prarabdha karma is over, my body is not capable of what going through life. So therefore, that prarabdha karma which is remaining will join into the sanchita karma and bring
New.
So basically all this stuff about preordained, fate and all, or preordained, let me put it that way, is just a crutch that people have created
Yes.
to explain things which
No,
they
but
don't want
you-
to accept responsibility for.
No,
Yes,
but
exactly.
Nirma, you're also saying that we have to look after our body in a particular way. But we also we could have gone at the time that was destined for
Yes.
us also.
See,
so
now
that is
we
yes.
are-
Destined by whom?
No.
Exactly. This is the
By the
problem
law
with
of cause
destiny.
and effect.
Exactly.
But then the law of cause and effect is not destined. Law of cause and
Exactly.
effect is free will, it's in law.
But it could have been
Absolutely.
which may take action much later, like something you do today, you won't know.
One thing
But
is,
that's what Vedanta does, it gives you the discretion to try and understand the consequences of your actions today.
Because when we pass away in this life, could be either from abuse of not looking after ourselves, which before, or it could be at a time when we were meant to, which was determined by our previous cause and effect. Am I right?
so when you say determine, see one thing we have to be very careful as to how we use the word determine. Okay? Because determine, it seems as though I have got nothing to do with it. If
Right.
somebody sitting out there is deciding my
No,
destiny.
No, from my cause and effect of my previous
Exactly. So that means there is a continuum. There is a continuum of cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect.
No,
And
she
let's say,
said cause and effect of previous life. Are you talking of previous life or this life?
No, my death today could be either negligence on my part
listen, yeah.
or predestined from my cause and effect from previous prarabdha karma.
Yeah. See, right now we are talking about Vijnanamaya because
Yeah.
now you want to understand the whole thing, and I can't explain everything, and because I have to bring in all the different types of karma, and then we go on all over different things, right? So,
You are on.
so just understand this much. Then I will answer your questions, your specific questions with me. Because otherwise I will just have to explain the whole philosophy and we don't get anywhere. So, Vijnanamaya here is, once I understand that there is a cause and effect that is operating, then where is my focus? That discriminative capacity, how do I use it?
On my
Present action, right? Because if the cause and effects are doing things, and the time frame within which the cause and effect work is much wider than what I can understand, then when certain things I don't understand, will I label things as unfair?
you might.
In my perception, I can say it seems unfair to me, but the way I understand the universe is, there is not one thing in this universe which is just random. Okay? So this is why you readjust your buddhi in keeping with what is. Right? Because you have a choice to just live with your belief system which does not correspond to reality. And you are free to do so. But the problem is when you live with your own set of beliefs which do not correspond to reality, it create suffering. And you are interested in getting rid of your suffering. And the only way to get rid of your suffering is to correct this thinking. Otherwise, you will find no way to correct this suffering. Right? So every time there is a distortion, then you have pain, physical pain. What? The universe tells you that there is some distortion, take care of it. Emotional pain is exactly the same.
It's a symptom.
It's a symptom. It tells you that there is something wrong in the way you are understanding, correct it. What happens? We don't listen to that, and what? We act and we react based on that, and what? We further entangle ourselves into wrong things. So this is why the discriminative capacity, this buddhi, is a very, very important thing. Okay? This is a place where all your decisions are taking place. This is the place where all your understanding of things are taking place. This is the way, the
Memories
place.
are created.
Yeah.
It's also when you hone your intellect and you start channelizing your emotions correctly. You know what
Yes,
they want.
exactly.
So you don't get so emotional. That's what they mean by don't get so emotional, because you're able to align your everything in the right.
Exactly. So that means without denying emotions, what generally what happens is that that emotion corresponds to the reality. What do? I add further and further story into it, and what? The story makes
Stories.
you build it up like this, right? And there are lots and lots of assumptions, and there are lots and lots of wrong understanding which are not in keeping with what is. And then this picture that you have created within you is leading to a lot of suffering. Outside event is a trigger. It's not that it is totally not there. There are some external reasons, but a lot of your suffering either can be managed properly or what? You get drowned with it. And that choice, how you're going to handle your emotions, that choice occurs at the level of buddhi. Okay? And this is what we call Vijnanamaya. That faculty you have been given, and please use this faculty. Okay? And this is why any Vedanta teacher, if it is a responsible teacher, will not tell you not to have sadness, not to have anger, not to have fear, because that automatically occurs. It is something which is at the level of mind. It gives you feedback. Okay? But what you do with that emotion is entirely in your hand, and that faculty that you have is called buddhi. So use that buddhi effectively to manage that emotion. If you learn to manage that emotion effectively over a period of time, that intensity of that emotion will also go away, reduce. Okay? Otherwise, that emotion will take over, and the more you say that, oh, I should not have that emotion, what will happen?
The more
The
you
emotion will come anyway, and you will what? Not only suffer from that emotion, you will also what? Label yourself as, oh, I'm not spiritual now, because I still feel sad, I still feel angry. Okay? So that means you will label further yourself as, oh, I'm no good, because I can't control my emotion. No emotion can be controlled, because if I ask you 5 minutes from now, what is the emotion that you are going to have? Do you know? You don't even know what emotion you are going to have. How are you going to control all your emotions throughout your life? It's impossible. You can only manage your emotions. Okay? You can only manage your emotions. And how do you manage emotions? The only proper management is when I align myself to the realities. Otherwise, what happens is you go from what? Negative thinking to positive thinking, and you always miss reality. Either you look only what? Somebody told me something which is very interesting, and they said, oh yeah, this positive thinking is what? That when the glass is half empty, then half full. I said, in Vedanta, we either are committed to half empty or half full. What is the reality?
Both.
Both. Exactly. The glass is half empty and also half full. This is the reality. Okay? This is the perspective, because it corresponds to exactly what is. You're not just partially choosing to pay attention to
Ignore that.
Yeah, exactly. We are not talking about ignoring realities. We are talking about seeing realities as they are and then deciding, okay, if this much is the water, what can I do with it? How can I use it in the best possible manner? This is objective.
Sometimes there are emotions and you understand the reality. Then you have to just accept what it is. Then you have to.
Absolutely.
That emotion of acceptance is also hard. Accepting the situation
This is-
which may cause sadness, happiness, or
Okay, now this is a very good point because our relationship with emotion is a very kind of a dubious kind of a relationship. Okay? We don't have, it's a very ambiguous relationship because when we are young, we are told by our parents that the good boys and girls, what? Don't get angry, don't get sad, and they don't cry, they don't do, so that means we are totally discouraged to express some of our emotions, right? And now as a child, is it possible for anybody to not have those emotions? So we all have. Okay? Now what is a child doing? You have this suppressed because I want to be acceptable in the eyes of my parents. My parents are my universe. I want acceptance from them. I want to be loved by them. I want to be feel. I want to feel
Appreciated or live up to.
Exactly.
But in Montessori, when you do teacher training, the first thing they teach you in child development is to address a child and say, how do you feel about this?
Yes.
Is it making you sad?
Yes.
I can understand if it makes you sad. Shall we think about why it could make you sad and how we can change that?
Excellent.
So, addressing the emotion and then helping the child to kick in the buddhi
Exactly.
to analyze it, and then I have seen myself from experience that they turn around and say, yeah, actually it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
when they see it objectively.
Yes.
And that's how you need to.
You need to, exactly. So therefore, the first thing, Shona, is it's true that we've all learned to somehow push it all aside, right? And it keeps on interfering. So the first reaction that we have as an adult is also push it aside. When sadness comes, we can't handle it. So then what do? We push it aside and we have become masters in distracting ourselves, right? So you start watching TV or you go call a friend, you go for a drink, you go for a party. These are all the different distractions that we have where we somehow try to avoid dealing with what all is lying here. Okay? But as long as there is a distortion which is all dormant, external situation will trigger it. It will all come out. And then, if you don't have that buddhi, if you have not a very well cultivated buddhi, what happens? That emotion takes over, you act based on that emotion, there is a kind of, you get really angry or you get into depression and you go so deep into that, okay? And then you can't pull yourself out of that. Or when you get really angry and you victimize others, what happens? You also feel guilty. It's not like you feel great about yourself. You don't. So that means you keep on adding confusion if you don't deal with your emotions. You further entangle yourself. The only way to deal with emotions is to cultivate buddhi. Okay? Cultivate buddhi, and one first thing is not when that emotion comes, you don't deny the existence. Don't try to distract yourself, stay with that emotion. Okay? One of the things that I have a friend here, and he was telling me that he met a psychologist from a very famous psychologist from the UK, and he said, she told me that, hey, learn to stay with your emotions. That the sadness is there, feel that sadness, otherwise what happens is you create fear of sadness.
So what happens when you feel that sadness?
You feel the sadness, in that sadness, having first accepted it, okay, what do you now do is look at what all is causing. Write it out. Say the reasons. Speak to your, that emotion requires some time. Okay, write why you are feeling sad. Okay, and write each of the reasons. Some of it you yourself will see that they are unreasonable expectations. Okay, when you see that they are unreasonable expectations, what will you do? You will correct the implicit assumptions which you have actually never looked into. When you correct it, naturally the intensity will go. Otherwise it will never go.
How to correct something natural? How to correct sadness that is in the parents naturally? How to
Sorry.
correct it?
Yeah, correct, because there are so many assumptions. One is, for
That my
example,
parents will be around forever.
yeah, that is a, everybody, at no time, everybody has to go through. This is the law of nature. What comes into being, it goes. Okay? Now, if you want to make something which is by nature going to go, and you want to make it permanent, you are in a losing game. And how are you then? Because then you will feel this huge emotional burden where your expectation is wrong, right? And then what will happen? That you cannot handle that event. Then later on what? Every future event that happens is what? Dealt with this burden of this event. So you, in fact, are making your own what? Entire life miserable. And you don't want it. Nobody likes misery. So you have to learn to help yourself to align with realities and somehow get a proper perspective to those realities.
So that works when you have loss of a parent, because that's the life cycle.
Yes.
But what about something like if someone has a loss of a child? That's not natural life cycle.
Yeah.
How do you deal with something like that?
See, what I'm saying is, what choice do you have? Tell me.
No,
Okay?
there's no choice.
There is no
I agree.
choice, right? So that means, I have seen, and I, as a Vedanta teacher, I have seen, people have incredible amount of sufferings, right? You think that is a child, that is the most very obvious kind of a thing, that losing a child. But if I really look into each one's life, there is a very profound sadness. And no human being can avoid it. Okay? And this is a fact. Right? So that means the situations can be all very different. It's seemingly different situation, but the fact that I am sad is something which is constant. Right? And therefore, the only way is, as I said, to change your expectations. Because otherwise, now, for example, if you really shift your perspective and say in this countless flow of time, our existence on this earth is, I think, full life is 100 years old, right? Now 100 years and 80 years in the countless flow of time, both are as insignificant as
20 years.
exactly. Right? So from my perspective, it seems like such a big thing. But in fact, from this perspective of the universe, which is what scales of time, it is actually not as big a deal. Right? So therefore, now that situation has happened, I did not want it. Now I still have a choice. Either I let my rest of my life be governed by that loss, right, and make myself miserable and make everybody else miserable, or I can say, okay, now this has happened, what can I do? Okay? I have seen some of the most noble people have suffered some very profound losses when they were young. Okay? But they overcame those problems and they became very big. They made a contribution which is like huge contribution. I'll give you one example, that one very famous family in South India, she lost her husband in a car accident. Okay? Now she was only in her early 30s or something when this happened, and you can imagine the loss. Okay? Now what happened is, it seemed, people didn't know exactly what was the cause of the accident, but it seemed that the other driver was an alcoholic, or maybe her husband also could have drunk a couple of glasses of I don't know what, right? So now what she did is, she used the rest of her life, either she can be miserable, but she started a kind of alcohol, exactly, this